Hello, everyone, and welcome to those of you in the room and to our global audience online, to our panel, Green Horizons Climate Transition for Banks in Emerging Markets. I'm Hannah Thomas-Peter. I'll be moderating today. We are joined by a truly fantastic panel of speakers who I will introduce you to in more detail in a moment. But first, a brief outline of this session, which is being held, as you will all know, as the climate crisis grows ever more severe and the imperative to act grows more urgent. In tackling this crisis, few sectors are more important than the financial sector, and banks in emerging markets, financial institutions in emerging markets, are playing their own unique and vital role in helping transition their economies away from ones reliant on fossil fuels to low-carbon economies. This is a very fast-changing landscape, full of challenge, yes, but also opportunity, as I think we will hear from our panelists, and also underlined by the EBRD's newly released report, Climate Transition of the Financial Sector. This report very much guiding our discussion for the next hour as we move from the challenges the sector is facing through to some examples of some real concrete actions that are already taking place, and then perhaps thinking a little bit about what the next chapter looks and feels like. Throughout the panel, we're very, very keen for everybody in the audience to use our Slido platform. This will help us gauge your thoughts on the key issues as we move through the hour. You can also use Slido to submit questions for the Q&A session at the end. And we also hope at that moment to call on a few of you in the room as well. So let's get started, shall we, with a quick video showing everybody here how the climate transition is already very much under. Okay, so with that fresh in your mind, we'll ease you into Slido. I'm going to ask you a question, have a think about it, and enter your answers as I introduce you to our panel. So the question I need you to answer in one word, if you can manage, is what is the biggest challenge your institution faces in the climate transition? One word is best. Think about it and enter in your answers as we introduce you to our expert panel. First of all, may I introduce Rania Al-Mashat, Governor of Egypt at the EBRD and Egypt's Minister of Planning, Economic Development and International Cooperation, delivering on, amongst many other things, the country's national economic agenda. Previously, Dr. Rania was the first woman to serve as Egypt's Minister of Tourism. Mikhail Bjerknert is the Chair of Management Board at JSC Bank Ukraine. With a background in corporate governance and strategic planning and transformation, he has previously worked in global roles at SEB and in senior leadership at Swedbank. Meral Murathan is Executive Vice President of the Industrial Development Bank of Turkey, TSKB. She is in charge of TSKB's Treasury and capital market operations, financial institutions and investor relations, development finance institutions, and climate change and sustainability management. A long list indeed. And then Francis Malige, welcome, is the Managing Director, Head of Financial Institutions here at the EBRD. Many of you will know him. Investments in economies. He led the EBRD's financial sector response to the COVID-19 crisis and the war on. And before joining the EBRD, Francis was Managing Director for Corporate Development at BNP Paribas and previously worked with Arthur Andersen and McKinsey. So let's get right into it now. In this first segment, as I said, we want to examine the challenges, perhaps some of the unique regional challenges facing the financial sector in emerging markets as they navigate the climate transition. So your Slido responses are in, and governance is the obvious one popping out there. Finance, training, and incentives. No surprise, I think, probably to our panelists is the one featuring most heavily. So to our questions now. For Dr. Rania, from your perspective, Dr. Rania, as Egypt's Minister of Planning and International Cooperation, what unique challenges are financial institutions in the Middle East and North Africa region facing when they're trying to implement climate strategies?
Well, thank you very much, and it's great to be here in the EBRD premise, a bank which is very much focused on not just lending to the private sector, but also building capacity of regional financial institutions and national financial institutions to be able to do that and partner with EBRD and other IFIs to actually push this green transition agenda. Let me maybe say that when you come from an emerging market, prone to shocks. So you put plans and targets, and then externalities come to push you a little bit in terms of policy. And when I say push you, I mean in terms of tighter monetary policy in many instances, stave off shocks, maybe more tightening also to face shocks. Both of these have direct implications on the cost of financing when it comes to banks nationally. So I would say that a few points come to mind. The government needs to be committed to climate action, and this we find in the different national strategies, be it Vision 2030. In our case, we have a 2050 climate strategy, very clear targets when it comes to our NDCs, and we publish them. So government commitment when it comes to these priorities is important because they are translated into projects. The second is being the projects and the sectors of priority, because once you are clear, you open up the scope for banks to actually think together with the private sector on either a PPP project, or also when we tap on financing from institutions, they come within a context of a particular project. So I would say clarity with the projects comes number two. And then the third is the credibility that the government has with IFIs, which then are able to pass on this credibility in terms of credit lines to the banks, to on-lend to the private sector, credibility which is important for institutions to de-risk private sector activity and use the different vehicles within the banking sector. Then comes regulatory frameworks, whether it's the banking laws, which again have certain criteria for sustainability, for climate finance, and then finally innovation with respect to some tools such as green bonds. We have several banks with the cooperation with EBRD and IFC and others issuing green bonds for the first time, and this is again allowing scope for the banks to lend in the green space. So when you ask me about the challenges, I added a little bit the framework or context, but I would say that external shocks which push a little bit the trajectory of cost of financing, I would say, is the biggest challenge that faces both corporates but also the banking sector, which wants to remain profitable and also wants to remain, with respect to its targets related to banking laws and financial stability.
Thank you so much. I mean, let's talk a little bit more about external shocks, shall we? To Mikhail now, given Ukraine's current circumstances, how are financial institutions like Private Bank approaching climate alignment while also managing in a real crisis?
Yeah, regarding shocks, then we are a country at war, and of course, then the priority is the lives of our population. So that is, of course, the highest priority, and from that perspective, we are working very much about how to ensure that people are safe, but also how we rebuild, how we both heal people who have been injured, both mentally and physically. So, of course, that is the number one priority. But surprisingly enough, I think there is a quite large movement, and as a financial institution, you have a role in that movement regarding more environmental. It's maybe not coming as it usually come from Europe, that you decide yourself that you're moving yourself into this. It's more that we are forced to. Because if you take one example, we don't know how to actually ensure the population that we have energy enough for the next winter. So then we actually need to start to work with things that can help that. And that, of course, to find new energy sources, it's to be more energy efficient and all those things. So it comes to some way naturally into the play. And from that perspective, we as a financial institution, with help of the IFIs, not at least the EBRD, who has been in Ukraine for a very, very long time, when we actually then help the corporates to invest. They have helped us with structure of how to also put in the green factor and the climate alignment into the lending conditions. So I think we are maybe a little bit more practical, but still we are moving forward.
Something good from something awful. So to Meral now, with a slightly different perspective. You know, as a Turkish development bank, how is TSKB navigating any potential tension, perhaps, between financing growth and promoting climate action?
Thank you very much. Thank you. No problem. Hello. Yes. Sorry for that one, and thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure to be here and having discussions with yourselves. The thing is, yes, you're referring to the tensions with growth, and in between whether the growth is a dilemma in relation to the climate mitigation or adaptation or climate change. From our perspective as a national development and investment bank, actually it's not. We believe that they're all connected. I mean, not through only the climate mitigation or adaptation, there's a social angle to that one too. So if we could just create a collaboration among these topics, then we believe that the potential growth of the country or countries, perhaps, I don't know, at least it's relevant from our researchers. For Turkey, it's relevant, will be even accelerated. And to this regard, actually, Turkey's reforms in relation to climate agenda has been on an accelerating and proliferating basis. On that thing, we could say that we have now sectoral maps, sectoral roadmaps, and also Turkey's own taxonomy, which is in its best efforts to be speaking with the EU's taxonomies, and also country has its own net zero targets. So, of course, we have some long way going that, but still, apart from the iron and steel, or let's say in general CBAM industries, we could also say that the energy transformation is taking a huge leap in Turkey, and in that regard, the renewable energy capacity, Turkey has a ambitious, really ambitious renewable energy capacity increase going forward. Just for your kind information, currently the installed capacity, total installed capacity through the renewable energy is accounted by 61%. And in terms of the utilization through the electricity production, it's nearly at 50%. And what we are basically doing as a national development and investment bank, we are basically trying to see all these priority agendas and trying to get these with the DFI, mainly borrowing from and securing funds, of course also involving EBRD, and also clients' needs in the field. And to this extent, how we do govern this, perhaps we could be touching upon that later on for the sake of time, but I could say that we do reinstate the medium and long-term targets to this end, and SDG focus is already there, and we have certain models to get connected with all these targets, I would say.
Thank you. Francis, I mean, there's three unique regional perspectives. Your sense now of what patterns you might be seeing across EBRD regions regarding climate transition challenges in particular for institutions?
So, first, indeed, these are very, very different cases, but EBRD invests in only emerging markets. And what we see is that the first thing is that the market is actually speaking. So, Mikhail is financing renewable energy in Ukraine, not just because it's good, because people are wondering how they will get it, but also because it makes economic sense. And the same can be said of these other two large countries of ours. But going back maybe a little bit to the numbers we showed in the beginning, I'd like to give a little bit more context. we see three really major patterns that emerge from this survey. We have repeated. We did the first in 2021, and we did it again in 2024, of nearly 100 partner banks across 32 economies. And what we showed, the first number we showed was 99%. Okay, so 99% of banks understand that there's. Okay, that's not. I would be surprised. Actually, I'm surprised it's not 100. I don't know who's the one out. You know, who has not gotten a memo. I'm not sure, but so everyone understands. Is also that for us the conversation has shifted dramatically, with banks and regulators, from explaining that climate change is coming to deciding how we're going to tackle, engaging with our banks, and our banks see that as their business role in communities to change, and that's a very, very important shift that we see up here. The second is that indeed they are not just speaking, but putting their considerable money where their mouth is, taking action. So many banks have taken steps. As we showed, nearly 40% of our partner banks report that they have already established long-term climate goals. And another 32, so we saw 71 on the screen, are planning to set them within the next year. And believe me, we're going to hold their words, to hold them to their words as we engage with them. They are embedding climate considerations into their business decisions. And again, this is helped by the fact that the market is pushing that way. Transparency is also increased. Banks report, there's probably an issue in the market about non-banks reporting about climate, but banks are at the forefront of reporting. And also we see green financial product offerings on the rise. It's becoming standard. 59% of banks now include green financial products in their standard, and 77% expect their green asset ratio to grow in the next 3 to 5 years. So it is very, very much on everyone's radar screen. And then finally, that is not easy work. We have other challenges in our region. Not to dwell too much on the war in Ukraine, it's not the topic of this panel, but it is a major challenge. We have banks in Palestine who are in the room as well, and they understand one or two things about difficult circumstances as well. But in more broadly speaking, what we see is the risk identification and assessment is still not common. We lack the tools, we lack the data. 80% of our banks report that they struggle to get reliable data. And then having the capacity to work on climate issues is also a big, big concern. I think it came out in a word chart there. And 49% of our banks also report lacking internal climate expertise. Now, this 49% is a high number. It's also lower than 3 years ago. Yeah. And for those that will still lack the expertise, we have the experts here in the room. Actually, they're a bit in the dark because of the way we've put up the lights. But they are here in the room. So anybody who is in this room and wants climate expertise, come to me in the end. I'll point you to the right people. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, so let's move on now to our second section, which really digs into some of the examples. We've already heard a few just then, of actions, of concrete actions, of solutions that already exist that are being implemented. So the Slido question is a quick one. I want you all to do it now. If you can go back into Slido and choose the option straight away. The question is, what kind of support would help your institution most right now? So you've got 5 options there: finance, training, data, regulatory clarity, and peer learn. Oh, goodness me. Okay, everybody voting. We've been very bossy and insist that everyone does it right now so we get a good sense of what you're all thinking. Okay, if everybody's contributed, that's quite an extraordinary result, and I'm sure the economists among us would perhaps worry that that's not necessarily representative. One response at the top. Okay, is everybody managing to log on to Slido? I'm going to keep being bossy. There we go. Okay. Thank you for rescuing me. Good. Okay, training. Interesting. A real spread there. So this is concrete. This is a good example of the range of needs. Data, as you just mentioned, Francis, coming out, looking like it's coming out on top there, a huge and expensive challenge for many institutions, not least institutions in emerging markets. Okay, so we'll keep that going, shall we? Just so everyone could have a kind of sense of what's going on. Let's hear now from Francis on maybe the bigger picture. So what specific tools, Francis, and resources is the EBRD providing to support its partner financial institutions in their own climate transition works?
So I'm glad to see that the people have been paying attention, because I've just highlighted data as the #1 challenge, and that's exactly what people say. But jokes aside, I think we are there with support for our financial institutions, and we understand very well that finance is actually not the biggest challenge, as it shows in these responses, right? We do have financing solutions for green, but these financing solutions always come with some form of technical assistance, either for our partner banks or for our clients, in some cases also with incentives for our clients. So for the clients of our clients, actually for the investors who are buying new equipment, to go the extra mile and buy technology that is ahead of the market, the specific market where they are. We've actually developed an online tool called a technology selector that helps people do just that. Identify and choose equipment that is going to be bringing the market forward, demonstrate to their peers that it is possible. We've also included the green finance into our trade facilitation program. We have a very effective trade facilitation program, and it's now greening itself at real speed. And we also support green bonds, obviously. Whenever anyone issues a green bond, we assist them by investing, but also in many, many cases by actually working with them to make sure that they segregate their assets properly. They create the proper asset pools to justify the green bonds and to avoid the greenwashing. And what we see is that our clients report that their green product offerings depend on development financial institutions like us. And that's very important. We're very proud to be catalytic in that field. And then on the capacity, because I see now data, but training is also quite important in this. We have pioneered a cohort-based development approach in several countries, including Armenia and Turkey. And that has taught us two critical lessons. First, systemic change requires to work not just with the banks at the institutional level, but also with the regulators. And the second thing is that we have to have learning tools that are actually adapted. So we've developed online and on-site delivery, so blending online and on-site approaches to training so that our partner banks actually can make progress. To date, we've engaged with nearly 70 partner banks and over 300 financial professionals, so there's obviously more to come. And then finally, and because we have Rania here, I want to highlight some of the things we did in Egypt. It's an excellent example, I think, of cooperation. We're about to see a video, I think, that highlights how EBRD provides finance, but also business advice and technical assistance where we think it's most needed.
Brilliant. Let's get that close focus now on what's happening in Egypt, which is obviously one of the EBRD's largest countries of operation. So, Dr. Rania, you spoke earlier about the importance of the relationship with the IFIs. You know, how are partnerships with those international institutions really helping to advance climate goals in Egypt?
Well, thank you very much. Before I answer that, I just reflect on the relationship between climate change and development, because it is at the of are we going to continue doing this or not? And also because our colleague from Turkey mentioned it, climate action and development do come hand in hand, and they are not mutually exclusive. The name or the title of the annual meetings here is Expanding Horizons, and the only way to expand horizons is through newer investments. And when we take a look at renewable energy, when we take a look at the potential of green hydrogen, when we look at electric vehicles, all of these, and even the small and medium enterprises going into energy efficiency, all of this is expanding of investment for them, employment, increasing skills. So it's really, we should not see climate action and development as two opposing forces. On the contrary, if we, in action and in our strategies and in our discussions in cabinet as policymakers, with business groups, with the banking sector, with regulators, if we have this as the linchpin and the background or at the backdrop of our discussion, I think we're going to be moving even faster with many of these targets. Going back to the power of partnerships. And, you know, most recently we are hearing and seeing IFIs sign with each other more agreements of collaboration. Egypt is a country of scale, is also a country with massive opportunity. And given the very strong relationship we've enjoyed with different IFIs and financial institutions, as well as bilateral partners, we have been a platform for their engagement with one another. So we've started this quite before even the latest drive of collaboration between IFIs. We're very happy to see this now between EBRD, the World Bank, African Development Bank, and so forth. And because everyone is saying to close the development gap, you need more private sector engagement, so the role of EBRD comes in even more strongly. The guarantees that might be provided by the World Bank through MIGA, if we're talking about the EU and the also the guarantees that they provide, this whole you know, constellation of tools, innovative financing tools, is the only way to de-risk private investments, and this goes all the way, not just to the big corporates, but to the small and medium enterprises, and also most lately and most importantly, the startups that have the agility to think about different technologies. We saw in the video here in Egypt, and I was very happy the last slide had the different partners that worked together. So you have the GCF, you have the EU, along with EBRD in two very important programs. And just a month ago, we were awarding prizes to these clients, both on the banking sector, which are using these tools to lend green finance to many of the companies, but also to the companies themselves who have been applying to use these facilities. So just you know, a few points. Number one, we need to bridge the information gap. Many initiatives, but not always do the private sector know about them. And it's important to reach the different clients, because they are the clients to the banks. And when the banks have clients, you know, there's going to be a demand-driven also aspect of pushing finance. In our case, we created a platform where the technical assistance and the grants and the different finance is available in one place. It's called Hafiz, the hub for technical advisory and financing for enterprises. The second point is also to, as a country, make sure that the conditions are available for the IFIs to work with one another. This requires more, you know, a clarity with respect to the different projects. In our case, we have a country platform, the Nexus of Water, Food and Energy, the NWEFI platform, and I'm happy that there will be a roundtable this afternoon to expand this expertise to other countries who want to do the same. EBRD is our key partner on the energy pillar, and through it, we've been able to mobilize concessional finance of close to $4 billion to generate 4 gigawatts. When you take a look at the private sector companies that have benefited, you will see, for example, EBRD, along with a commercial bank, along with CIF, along with MIGA. So it's really on one project, the ability to constellate all of these different pockets of financing and move forward. So we're very proud of the financing, the green financing aspect that's taking place in Egypt. We can still do much more through local banks, and that's why what Frances is doing with respect to commercial banks in Egypt, as well as the green bonds that we discussed earlier, all of this is going to push us even further, despite the complexity of the very complicated global backdrop.
Complexity is the thing, isn't it? That requires the greatest agility and skill as you navigate crises. So I think that's a good moment to turn to Mikhail, who could perhaps tell us a little bit about what actions Private Bank is taking to build that internal capacity, as we were just hearing, for climate-aligned finance, despite what's going on in country.
First of all, I'm really impressed about what you have done in Egypt, and we are not as far advanced in Ukraine. And that probably depends also that we have had a large influence from a country who is bigger and don't really have that interest into the environmental aspects. But with that said, Ukraine is moving forward, and we try to contribute, of course, to this, since we are a large financial institution. And first of all, you need to have corporate governance in place. So even if it was late, 2023, we approved a ESG policy, and that is probably 10 years or 15 years later than many countries here. But we have it, and we have since then worked through that in different aspects. We have developed environmental and social risk management systems. We have gone through the different risk in all our portfolios. We have created risk appetites. We have exclusion lists. We are working with the corporates in the portfolio. So I would say a lot of the structure is there now to continue to be developed. But I think an even more important thing is training, and because both our own employees, but also our customers, need to have more training in this, what this really means. And of course, data is important to clarify things, but in our case, I think training is more important right now. And here we have a lot of help, and we have actually educated around 1,100 of our employees, 800 out in the network, meeting customers, helping them with loan applications, and around 300 in more central units for everything from corporates to credit granting. So we are trying, because I think the motivating factor in the society and for us as a bank and affecting society is actually to motivate people and start talking about this and ensure that when we do things, we do it hand in hand with the green aspects. And I'm very happy actually to say that this has given some result. We were actually approved, or we are compliant with the World Bank standard according to this. So that's probably something at least.
How are you finding that motivation aspect when you're delivering training and education? Are people responsive? Are you having to is it hard to get people to engage on the issues, or are you into an open door already?
No, on the contrary, people want to do it, and also customers want to do it. But there's a structural capital is not there really yet. But together we can fix that.
For Meral now, because TSKB has been a pioneer in sustainable finance in Turkey, what specific tools have been most effective in your considerable experience?
Thank you very much. Again, I guess the cooperation that we all have, basically with DFIs and of course with EBRD, is quite contributing and helping us in terms of maintenance of our already built up capacity. I would like to underline this because it's not there's not a period to that, or there's not a it's a continuous process. You need to continue with your own both ownership within the bank, within each and every institution, and then closely monitor what's going on both in terms of national scale and also the in quotation, I would say, the trends or challenges or trade things, all the communications throughout the world. And here, collaboration in us and the development finance institutions is really helping us in terms of delivering our mission and vision. Internally, what we are doing this, first of all, the ownership is key. The ownership at the level of the board, and then the CEO, and then the management committee, and then throughout the whole business disciplines and all the related headlines. Unless, I mean, this is kind of a top-to-bottom approach, but it does not end there. I mean, there's a parallel thing, and it's also we need to take it from the bottom to top too. I sometimes take it like a circle. I mean, we need to also put the dots and get connected, all the dots within that circle too. Otherwise, I mean, things will not be going in that direction, even though you are on ESG frameworks or policies, all the procedures, it doesn't have. So for us, taking this level as a basis, we have already our models within the bank generated for the, I mean, starting of the 2004, basically. We do assess all the environmental and social risks of each individual credit. It doesn't matter whether it's an investment loan, for working capital loans, we are doing one too. Initially, I assume it was both, it was basically on the, or through the perspective from the environmental agenda. Then we built it up and try to strengthen it with the SDG alignment as well. We have internally developed an SDG mapping tool. That tool also allows us to depict first the identity and then gets making the connections, relevant connections for each and single project, which project or which type of investment or loan is delivering what type of SDGs. And we are reporting those. And then we've started in 2020 nearly, created our own model named Climate Risk Evaluation Tool. So environment, change another level to climate. And through that, we've also, of course, collaborated with EBRD in terms of brainstormings, etc. It was the first Jeff credit line, actually, we made it as an action plan, I would say. And apart from these technical details, we are just taking this through our engineer levels or technical people, but we're also following these results through the portfolio as well, loan portfolio as well. And apart from that, we are basically very much keen on developing new themes. So new toolkits we're generating, and now we're working on gender and youth. So firstly, we are very much excited in terms of depicting the priorities in the country. And on the basis of this, we are delivering through the toolkits because measurement is key. And then we are doing this with the DFIs and the securities issuances in the green bonds or social bonds. And then we are just transferring this to our clients. So that's the way it goes in TSKB.
A fantastically broad range of examples, from the technical detail to the cultural. Really useful to hear some of those actions that are already underway. So now we've done challenges, we've done concrete actions. We're moving into the final segment of the panel, which really starts to think about what the next critical chapter looks like and how we might accelerate the transition. So we're going to do your last Slido poll. Please rescue me again. What is your institution's top climate priority as you think about the future? So you've got 5 options there: leadership, risk integration, disclosure, climate governance, transition planning, and capacity building. We did hear earlier about the importance of capacity building, particularly from the EBRD's point of view. Governance was one of the things that popped up in the previous poll as well. And risk integration, we've heard from all of our panelists about how crucial that is as they navigate the transition. And it's the same for all of you. Risk integration and capacity building, both competing there to be in the lead on that answer. Okay, so let's dive in. We're going to leave it up because I want as many of you as you can to contribute while we just dive into this ourselves. And just to set the scene for this acceleration segment, we're going to have a very quick look at a video which describes some of the EBRD's work with financial institutions. Just a quick reminder that you can use Slido as well to submit your tricky, challenging questions at the end. We'll try and get to as many as we can. Do put those in there as we go through this final segment. So let's go to Miral again, and just hear a little bit about how TSKB's governance structure has evolved to support climate objectives.
Initially, actually, we had our own sustainability committee at the management level. It was back in 2008-ish period. And then we decided to, as we indicated or discussed among ourselves today too, decided to establish a board level committee. And it went back to 11 years ago, I would say. And apart from that, that integration within the bank, creating the integrated policies within the bank, it also helped us with committee-level discussions. Just as an example, a kind of a project, let's think, we are also started with the transition financing within the bank, and we've delivered a cement industries SBTI target ownership client alone just very recently, and it's a delicate project, as you know. And in that way, what we do is, at the committee level, we are starting off with all the the models that I just mentioned, basically. We are trying to assess the impact of that individual project. And all the portfolio level individual project emphasis is delivered to the committee members right at the beginning of the credit evaluation committee. So they start with some kind of a judgment, perhaps prejudgment, I don't know. Then we do the individual projects on details. So that's kind of a project implementation we have, at least at the credit evaluation committee basis. And we will continue with this. And just final thing before wrapping up here around this for the sake of time. At the both bank level and the board level, we have KPIs for both members and the CEO himself and the board members for such sustainability KPIs. So we are also message throughout this perspective, I would say.
Thank you, Mikhail. To you, I think now, just a bit more detail on how you're preparing Private Bank for climate-aligned future while managing other priorities like reconstruction.
But we working very hard in these areas, and we are optimistic. I'm a Swedish citizen. I've been just 4 months in Ukraine, so of course I see there's a lot of things that the population and the country needs to do to cope with these challenges. But I have to divide it a little bit in short term and long term. Short term, we have a need, as I was alluding to in the beginning, and when we don't have, a lot of energy sources are not there in the longer, and then we just need to fix it. And Anja, you were into that. This goes hand in hand, and that's important. When we reinvest, why don't reinvest in the right way, directly? And we don't see any, I would say, obstacles for there. There's just to do it short term, and there's a motivator. I think the more long term, then of course we as a financial institution has a drive in society, but here I also think that the IFIs, because needs to be part of this, because capital of environmental question is not as high in the society in general, and not even mental authorities. So I think that we need to create a long-term plan in creating, saying that where does this country want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, to working that plan besides these short-term actions. But we have a lot of engaged employees, we have a structure, and we work hard.
So Dr. Rania, from a policy perspective now, if you could tell us a bit about the steps that Egypt is taking to support financial institutions' climate action, and simultaneously, as we've talked about, therefore, advancing the country's economic development.
Well, being the only government representative
Yes.
on the panel, and agree that since grad school I've always had debates with my colleagues: is the situation a macro situation, or if everyone does their stuff on the micro level, we'll move ahead. And I always believe that really policy is what can push and accelerate everyone to be able to put correctly and move ahead. So there is a very big portion of this which lies on the shoulders of the government, because as you mentioned, the long-term strategies, which are known in abbreviation as the LTSs, and there's a lot of also IFIs which provide capacity building and technical assistance for countries to put together their long-term strategies on climate action. And this clarity becomes important, as I mentioned, because it provides a vision of where private sector can come in and where the banking sector actually find these business opportunities. Because at the end of the day, the banking sector needs to make profit, needs to be able to meet its objectives with respect to capital adequacy ratios and all of that. So, a few points on the global landscape, because the global landscape also pushes nationally. And I have to say that the word global public good and global public goods is an important word, because each country, with all its institutions, be it national or private or NGOs, each one is actually contributing to the global public goods, because you are contributing to a local NDC or a national NDC. So we should not belittle each and every contribution to the bigger picture. And that's where, in the global context, we have an upcoming conference in Seville, Financing for Development. And the financing for development aspect of it is where is the financing going to come to push the climate transition further. And here come innovative tools, as we mentioned, but one that I missed talking about, which are debt swaps, because debt burdens are quite big on governments, particularly in emerging markets. And so we want to create that fiscal space, which helps with lower interest rates, which helps with more predictable macroeconomic policy. In our case, when we started NOAFI, it started with a debt swap with Italy to decommission some of our gas, electricity generating plants. So again, there's a sovereign element of innovative financing, which this then trickles down to private sector engagement and furthermore. So in our case, the Financial Regulatory Authority is pushing for the voluntary carbon markets. We have a framework for that. That's one element of pushing the green transition. If I'm looking at the banking sector, there's a sustainable finance strategy. There's a lot of technical assistance and programs which are being done with IFIs, including EBRD, to be able to address some of the points that you put on your slide. And even though you've asked the participants to prioritize, all of them are interlinked at the end of the day. You need the data to be able to do the stress tests and build the capacity of staff in the banking sector and also in the private sector. And I would say that the most important aspect from a government perspective is being transparent and just push as much information as possible when it comes to the plans, the objectives, and also the tools that are available. And I think we need to do more about that. And then finally, the credibility that governments have with the international community is the key element which then private sector and banks leverage to be able to increase business in an effective and efficient way.
Thank you. And Francis, tell us a bit about how the EBRD is collaborating with partner banks to really accelerate the climate transition in this next chapter.
You know, we often speak of the, we're a market-based institution, and it's, people often speak of the invisible hand of the market. Now, we've just seen the very visible hand of Rania shaping the market, and that's very important to start from the top. And what we try to do is we try to leverage the invisible hand. Any one of us who was a teenager in the house knows how far they're pushing for, us to not take planes to go on vacation and so on and so forth, right? And they will also tell you when they try to hire those a few years later, how interesting it is to be able to have a story to tell in terms of climate if you want to have talent joining you in your bank. And that's exactly, there's many different influences that are pushing essentially in the same direction. And in my view, there's a tipping point coming. The market is pushing us in the right direction through business incentives and through these sorts of incentives that Rania and the colleagues have described. We, of course, also try to, and we need champions in each of our partner financial institutions, from the CEO down to brilliant people inside the organization who are pushing for this. Now, we are very, very happy to support all of this through finance. We saw numbers around 3 billion of EBRD green finance just through the financial sector. EBRD as a whole did more last year. That's 26% from the previous, more than the previous year anyway, just in the financial sector. But we try to do this in a form of smarter capital, because what we want is our clients to continue doing these things even after our money has been used. Second, the same approach goes for governance. We can double or triple or quadruple the amount that we lend to our partner financial institution. It remains a fraction of their balance sheet. So if we can get them to green their entire balance sheets, we demultiply the impact that EBRD can have. And that's why we always work to make climate governance into a mandatory topic into the boardroom rather than a niche topic. And finally, of course, building capacity. There is, as Michael mentioned, there is demand from staff to know how to do these things. So bringing the capacity to staff is something that is extremely important. So going forward, we have the market forces going for us, and those that oppose market forces should well remember this famous quote from Keynes, that you can believe that the market is wrong, but remember, the market can remain wrong longer than you can remain solvent. I think the climate deniers are going to go bankrupt.
Great quote. Okay, we're heading into the final 7 minutes of this panel. We're going to squeeze every bit of value out of it that we can for you. So let's just do some very quick in our panel ideas. Let's just a couple of sentences so we can get to questions of one practical idea or mindset shift that you think should embrace. Now, let's just go along this way. Mikhail, you first.
Yeah, no, first of all, we are extremely grateful for all support from the IFIs and not at least the EBRD. But when working with several IFIs, it's sometimes cumbersome because you want the same thing, but you put up a lot of different rules about the same thing. And that actually for customers, educate our staff, it a little bit too complicated. So that is something I would wish from the IFIs to harmonize better.
Simplicity and clarity. Dr. Rania.
Simplicity and clarity, growth and jobs. Growth and jobs is a title which is understood by governments, by the public, by banks. Everyone wants to grow and everyone wants to employ. So I think if we are able to take a very simple title and dissect it into tools and at a bank level, at a government level, we are in a good shape.
Francis.
Michael, point taken. I think I have an easy solution for you. You only work with one IFI, that would be better. But no, I mean, jokes aside, we are making effort in that direction. We are aware of the issue. One of the first things we did when we discussed how to implement the Paris Agreement with our partner financial institutions is we reached out to our friends at the IFC to make sure that we would recognize each other's alignment work, so that we wouldn't have a situation where you come to us and say, oh, I'm aligned with the agreement as per the IFC, and we would say, oh, but the EBRD methodology is slightly different and of course a little bit better, and therefore you have to redo the work with us, please. So we've agreed to actually recognize each other's work. This being said, it is still work in progress. One of the things that was mentioned in the Slido is the risk management. So I'd like to say there's only two sets of banks listen to more than IFIs, and it's their regulators and their risk managers. So board the regulators and the risk managers, we have a winning combination.
Thank you. Dr. Rania, you just wanted to say something quickly there.
I just wanted to say that the coordination between IFIs and the streamlining of messages also lies on the government to a large extent. And that's why, you know, creating that platform of discussion and prioritizing what we want is important. And I think in our case, Nwafi provides a very good example, and there are other examples. I advocate that every government should have a Ministry of International Cooperation to put all together in under one umbrella.
Bang a few heads together.
Yes.
Meral.
So despite all challenges Francis has highlighted, I would say, what's going on around the world currently. I just wish that we do not leave all the motivation on the table. We are committed. We do continue with our path. And I agree, the climate is there, and the others will be bankrupt. Hopefully not bankrupt. I mean, they will be joining the team again. So the motivation is key. The reason I'm saying this, we need to keep the clients motivated as well, because this noisy environment that is not helpful. And with your all permission, I would like to kindly note again the NZBA's final situation. So it's no good from our perspective either, because it do actually violates the competition, perfect competition within the industries as well, each industry, I would say. That being said, as TSKB, now we are getting a bit more learning the nature angle of everything, not the environment only, climate only. It's kind of an ecosystem crisis. We do now get inclined to define it that way, as the DFIs do. And this respect also includes the perspective to include the social angle. So not just the climate, but also nature, I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got time for questions, I'm delighted to say. Is there anybody in the room who has a burning question? We've got a roving microphone. I've got a lot over here. Thank you, sir. If you could just say who you are, where you're from, and direct your question if you would like.
Tom McAleese, Alvarez and Marcel. Very good session. I was in Madrid on the 28th of April when there was a power cut and the whole of the Iberian Peninsula came down. And we were in a blackout. Nobody knew what was going on. So I was going to taxi out late that evening, and the taxi drivers are the only guys with the radios at work. So I was asking them, you know, what happened? Cyber attack, no. You know, terrorist attack, no. Reason is net zero. Thought, what? Net zero? The whole power system, the grid, broke down because of the overload of the renewable energy, about 60% of the renewable energy in the Iberian Peninsula. So just wondering, you know, from an investment cost challenge risk perspective, do you have to kind of revise your priorities by looking at energy security and the grid system as well as producing the power, you know, or whether you've thought about that at all?
It's a great question, and I think, Dr. Rania, I mean, the importance of the grid.
Investment in the grid is key, and I think when Francis was saying that there's a lot of market demand and those who are not going to join are going to drop out. In our case, there's a lot of, and in many countries, there was a lot of demand on renewable energy projects which took place, but in many instances, the grid is still not ready to create that stability similar to when you're using gas or when you're using fossil fuel. So, I mean, this was a very big experiment, if you will. It's a warning signal, and it just is a signal for other countries to make sure that as you are doing the private investments with respect to renewables, you have to really focus on the grid. We're in discussions with EBRD on also how to price the grid for emerging markets at some times. Should it always be the government that is investing, or could there be some element of private investments in grid as well? But this is a live example, and it affected a very big portion of the economy across the board.
I'm just going to go to Slido to make sure that we encapsulate some of these questions. Some great questions coming in. And this is about the just transition. And it's about how you ensure communities benefit and that nobody's left behind as you navigate the climate transition. Who would like to take this? Francis, there's something that perhaps you guys can talk about.
That's, of course, very, very important and at the forefront of our thinking. And when we look at the way the climate transition is affecting communities, some communities are clearly affected in a different way. you have those that are going to lose employment. When there's a coal mine and a coal-based power plant in a region, you can't replace those jobs very easily. And so understandably, politicians in that region are reluctant to push for the change. So we design products, we design lending programs with our partner banks that focus on these regions when we feel that is needed, for example. There's also a lot of communities that are actually hit in other ways by climate change. Mountain communities are going to face very, very different rain regimes once the glaciers are gone. And so it will take different ways of doing agriculture. It will take different ways of earning a livelihood. And so we develop products that support these initiatives, support the investments that are required to adapt in those cases. And we have, the good thing with climate change is we know it's coming. We know, unfortunately, that the glaciers will be gone. There's almost a date for the end of the glaciers in Kyrgyzstan, and you know, and so we have the time to adapt. We have the time to find alternative solutions, working hand in hand with governments and with our partners in the financial world. And of course, we also know that the grid needs investment.
That brings us to the end of the panel. A fascinating and wide-ranging discussion. We've heard about the importance of collaboration and partnerships, and we've heard really the message that's ringing through, that the alignment, there is a strengthening alignment between doing the right thing for the planet and the commercial interests of the financial sector, because it has been forced to, because it is necessary, because it makes business sense to, and because it is the right thing for the generations who come after us. We're going to leave you with a gift. Don't tell us that we never give you anything. I think we can put a QR code up on the screen, which is exclusive access to the brand new report from the EBRD, Climate Transition of the Financial Sector, the State of Play in the EBRD regions. That's just for you, nobody else has got it. So that all that remains for me to do is to say thank you so much to our wonderful audience, both in the room and our global audience online. Thank you, of course, to the EBRD. And please join in thanking our fantastic panel today.